Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Oscar Otieno, Deputy Data Commissioner, Office of the Data Protection Commission. Just to pick from where Harry has mentioned, as an office, as at yesterday when I checked, we had 2,165 complaints. Many are coming in. They are from different sectors, but mostly from the financial services sector, and more specifically from the digital credit providers. So it's a journey that we're walking. Again, statistically, I think it is because of lack of information or something. It's just about 867 cases that were admissible, meaning that they fall within the mandate, and then the rest, about 68%, are not admissible, meaning that they do not fall within the mandate. So that tells us that we have a lot of work to do to inform the public of our mandate and all that. So fast forward on this annual Africa SACCO Tech Forum, it's all about digital transformation. I think globally we are all undergoing digital transformation. Africa is not left behind, and Kenya is also not left behind. And I think the current government is very keen on digital transformation, so much such that within the ICT ministry, they have brought in the what they are calling the digital economy, isn't it? With the whole PS looking after digital economy. So I would wish to say, I'm not speaking on behalf of government, but as a government, we are equally not left behind. We will not sit back and look at digital transformation being spearheaded by the private sector, and then we play a catch-up as the way it has been. So that's not the case. So the case right now is that the government is also really trying to catch up with this digital transformation. And in any sector, take any sector, matatu, whatever sector, agriculture, there is always a regulation, isn't it? There's always a regulation, and in digital transformation, it basically involves people, processes, systems, users, and the data, isn't it? So for a long time, there hasn't been any regulation around the data space, but the government is now keen. It realized that there is need for regulation into that space, and with that now, I can just quickly give you an overlook of the landscape of how this regulation has come into place and how what the government is doing. In 2010, the Constitution was promulgated, and specifically Article 31 recognizes the right of the privacy as a right of individual. Section 6 talks about your right, about all your information, and you have the right to protect your information and your information not being shared around. And D specifically talks about your communication. Your communication should not be spent, should not be shared around without your consent. So to give effect to that piece of article of the Constitution, there was the Data Protection Act, which came into being, and it was enacted into law on the 25th of November 2019. So with that piece of law being there, the first data commissioner was appointed in November 2020. So with that, it means that the office came into being, and what the first data commissioner did was in establishing this office was to get some stakeholders from ministries. There were some representations from various sectors, and the first regulations were put in place. There were 3 sets of regulations that came into being. This is the Data Protection General Regulations 2020 that just talks about the establishment of the office and definitions of data controllers, data processors, and all that. Then what may be more of interest to you is the Data Protection Registration of Data Controllers and Data Processors, all of 2021. This is what defines, if you are a data controller, what are your obligations, what are the principles and the rights of data subjects and all that, and how do you process people's data in this new dispensation. Then thereafter, actually these we are calling it the data protection registration of data controllers and processors. It's all about compliance. But government as a regulator, if you do not comply to the law, there must be consequences. So there were regulations that were put in place, which we are calling the data protection, complaint handling and enforcement procedures, so that anyone who does not comply with the compliance regulations and the Data Protection Act, then legal action can be taken against them in accordance to the complaints handling and enforcement procedures. So those came into being, and briefly, what is the mandate of the office? The mandate of the office is, first of all, there to regulate the processing of personal data. Initially, data used to belong to the data controllers. Maybe you are a SACCO, you go collect data, that data is yours, you process it how you want, you give your statements whenever time you want, but that has changed. Now, with these new laws and all that, the data belongs to the data subjects. They have rights, and there are laws that set out the principles under which you can process that data. We also ensure that the processing of data is done in accordance with the Act and the regulations, the 3 regulations that we have looked at. We also do receive and investigate complaints, which I started by mentioning how many we have received. We are continuing to process most of, majority of them. Some are not in good books, some are in good books, meaning that they are complying, which is a good thing. We are also there to protect the privacy of individuals. If you think that your privacy has been infringed in terms of your personal data, know that right now you can report the same to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. Then we're also there to establish the legal and institutional mechanisms to protect your personal data. Initially, your personal data could be moved from here, processed somewhere outside, especially in the health sector. They take your samples, go process and make medicines, and then come and sell them to us without your consent, without your involvement. That one is stopping. We also provide data subjects with their rights and remedies to protect their personal data from any inappropriate processing. This is what we have been doing as an office. But before we move forward, who is a data controller and who is a data processor? It's a question that has been asked, and people sometimes ask, can I belong to both data controller and data processor? Yes. The answer is, a data controller is that person who collects and determines how he is going to process your data. That one is a data controller. For example, a SACCO. There are lots of fintechs here. If you collect directly people's personal data, then you are a data controller. If on the other hand, you don't collect, or you can collect and give it to somebody to process it on your behalf, then that person who is processing on your behalf is a data processor. For example, like in the fintech industry, those who are doing agency banking. Agency banking, they collect, they can open account on behalf of the main SACCO or the main bank. That is just as an example. But please note that within the Act, and I invite you to take time and read it, you should be in control of what the agent or your processor is doing, because you are the one who has given him this authority to collect and process data on your behalf. So if anything happens, and this is something where we are having a lot of trouble with the data controllers, they are saying, no, I gave this guy the permission to process that data, but maybe he has not processed it in accordance with the laws. At some point, you can also be called to be liable, and maybe just to give insight of under circumstances under which the data processor under you is not adhering to the Data Protection Act and its regulations. So that's basically the difference, but somebody can become both. You can become a data controller, and you have your subsidiary doing your data, who is a data processor, or for example, even in the telecommunications, we've seen that a lot, even in the health sector, and even in the fintech sector. So now, briefly, the law, the Data Protection Act, as I mentioned earlier, requires you to process people's data with a lot of dignity and in accordance with the principles set out in Section 25 of the Data Protection Act. And some of the principles, like first one is lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. It means that whenever you're collecting people's data, are you collecting it lawfully? For what reason are you collecting it? You need to inform that person why you are collecting it. You need to process that data fairly and in a transparent manner. Should you be called upon whenever there is an issue, you can demonstrate that this is how I processed this data subject data. Then there is also the principle of purpose limitation. Purpose limitation is why are you collecting that data, for example, in the first instance. To give you an example, in the SACCO industry, we have seen a situation whereby most SACCOs now, they do have the savings and credit, which is their main core business, and majority also have an investment wing, isn't it? So a SACCO goes and collects people's data. I join a SACCO for purposes of savings and credit. Then in the next couple of months, I am being told by another investment wing that there is land in Budalangi or in Namanga. I mean, did I want that land in the first place? Me, my priority was to save, take a credit, maybe take my son to a school outside. That is the why I gave you my data. That's why I'm giving you my financial, that's why I'm transacting with you. So before you even take this, your member into another savings arm or investment arm, let him be informed. So stick to the purpose for which you collected this person's data. That is what we are saying under that principle. And data minimization. The way the SACCOs operate, if somebody wanted a credit facility, he will walk into his SACCO and ask for a credit, and usually you ask for guarantors, 3 or more, isn't it? So now, why are you changing that? Now, when I want a credit, I give you the name of my father, my mother, and my uncle. Can you minimize yourself to the data that is relevant? If I give you all my information when I joined, and I want a credit, and the loan policy is saying that I need to give details of guarantors. Stick yourself to that. Stop collecting more than what you need. That is what we are talking about under data minimization principle. Then we have the accuracy and accountability. The data that we gave you, are you processing it accurately? Can you be accountable for all the data that I've given you and is in your custody? Storage limitation. This being a financial sector doesn't apply so much, but it does, yeah? If I give you my data, for how long do you want to store it? I know my father used to belong in a SACCO. I think it was the telecom SACCO or something. If you walked in there, I think he left almost 15 years ago. The data is still there. What the Data Protection Act is currently saying is that somebody has a right to be forgotten. It's not absolute. You can look at, while applying this, you can look at other legislations like the PFMA Act, because I know financial records needs to be kept for quite a longer time. But we are seeing in other, allow me to call them small data controllers, who, for example, are collecting data and are using it for longer than it's necessary. For example, if there was like a rugby match along Angong Road, KRFU, then you decide to pass by to watch that rugby tournament. What you do, you get into the gate, they take your name and maybe your mobile number for purposes of processing your ticket. When you pay, you get in, you watch the match, and then that's over. It's the only one time you wanted to watch that match. But now KRFU will now, year in, year out, keep telling you about the next match and the next match and the next match. But the reason why you gave that information was for that one particular reason. So we are saying that storage limitation, please, this guy has a right to be forgotten, and if he requests that you remove his data, you need to comply with that. Then lastly, integrity and confidentiality. This being a tech summit, I know I can sit down and you lecture me about integrity and confidentiality, but what that principle really talks about is put in place measures to ensure the data integrity of the integrity of the data of your members that you are collecting, and of course confidentiality. So that being on the principles focusing on the data controllers and data subjects mostly, note that now with the new laws, the data subjects have rights. And the whole, under the digital transformation, this whole idea has changed, and data now belongs to the data subjects, and they have a right. And one of the rights under Section 26 of the Data Protection Act is the right to be informed. Initially, how guys used to collect data is you're given a form, you feel you're not even told why that data is being collected. But right now you can object, and you must be informed why that data is being collected. Isn't it? You also have the right to access of personal data, and this one we have seen a lot of changes in the financial services sector, including SACCOs. If somebody gave you his data, that financial data that you're holding belongs to the data subject. So find a way, we are saying as a commission or as an office, that you find a way of how you can give access to this person's personal data to him. Find your own ways. If it is, for example, a statement, find a way that he can access his personal data. If he wants it physically, you can maybe it's allowed to levy some charges, which is reasonable. Okay, this never used to happen. Initially, you had to pay for you to get your own personal data. It is a right to correction. If maybe something was captured not correctly, you have the right to go and tell the data controller or data processor that this data is not right. Please correct. You have the right to deletion. The right to deletion is not absolute right. Like we have talked about financial records and all that. There are those records that can be deleted, but there are those that cannot be deleted. For example, data held by the government. If I have a criminal record against somebody, you cannot walk to DCI and tell him, delete my data. It is not an absolute right. It is a right that is accessed on a need-to-need basis. For example, the Kenya National Examination Council holds data about our performance from primary, isn't it? I think from primary up to secondary, not university. You cannot walk there and tell them to delete that data. So it's not an absolute right. It is looked at on a need basis. The data subjects have a right not to be subjected also to automated decision making. So when you're automating all these and we are doing digital transformation, know that there is that right. And as we automate, provide for instances where somebody can object to those automated decision making, which also applies to number 6, the right to object to processing, either part or in full data sets that you hold. You can tell him you can process this much or not, and also the right of data portability. Data portability right, we have seen it being exercised a lot in the health sector. For example, where somebody used to be posted in Lunga Lunga in a government institution, you go there, that government or that general health facility has your health record, and now you've been given transfer to Luakaka. I don't know if you know Luakaka. It's at the border of somewhere in Bungoma, Busia. Then once you've been given a transfer there, you need to continue getting medical attention. Then now, this new facility asks you to take samples and all that kind of things that you've already taken. We are saying no, you have the right to walk to that facility in Lunga Lunga and tell them that, give me all my data, and you put it to the new health facility that you are in. It never used to happen, but now we are seeing this happening. I don't know if there's any data portability in SACCOs. I don't think so. Can you move from one SACCO to the other with your data? I don't think so, isn't it? Nothing. Okay, doesn't happen there. But these are general rights of data subjects. And the law now requires us to register as data controllers and data processors. But the question that we are asking ourselves is, why should we register? Okay, well, fine. First of all, it is the law. The law, the Data Protection Act says that if you are collecting and processing people's personal data, you must register. So that one, the law is as it is, and we cannot do anything about it. Secondly, it also promotes, it shows that you are promoting and protecting the rights of your members, the privacy of your members, which is a good thing. And lastly, I can encourage you guys to also go and register, because if you register, it increases the trust and contributes to your SACCO business growth. So, how do you register? Registration is pretty simple. It's a three-step. I call it a three-step because the last step is renewal. First, you need to, you go to our website and make an application. On the right-hand pane, you'll see a link. Then you will submit all the documents, which you're going to see shortly. We will review those documents, and then after that, when we are satisfied, you will be, we will issue you with a certificate. A certificate is not compliance, it is just part of the journey of compliance. So there is a registration certificate, and then after every 2 years, you renew the same. Last time I checked, I think SACCOs are doing well in terms of registration, but there's still a lot. There's still a lot to be done in the SACCO industry. Those are some of the documents that you need to provide when you're registering as a data controller or data processor. There's a certificate of incorporation. There's a previous year's turnover. We are going to see why. Then there's a description of data that you are collecting. Are you collecting data for your members only? Are you collecting data for your suppliers? Or is it your employees' data? Measures that you've taken to protect your data, and that is basically the technologies you put in place, and the kind of your business information details where you can be found. So according to Schedule 2 of the General Data Protection Regulations, this is how these are the fees that are levied for registration. If you are a small, let me call it micro and small data controllers, meaning that you have between 1 and 50 employees with an annual turnover of up to 5 million, then the first registration is 4,000 and a renewal fee of 2,000. For medium data controllers, with employees between 51 and 99, that one is 16,000. And for large data controllers with more than 100 employees and a turnover of over 50 million is 40,000. So the public entities, charities, and religious entities, you do 4,000 and renew with 2,000 every time. That's how the certificate looks like. It was slanted so that we avoid reading the QR code. And maybe one last part that I need to talk about is the breach. Kindly note that the law right now requires you to report any data breach that occurs in your premises, and you have, if you are a data controller, you have 72 hours to report to the data commissioner if there was any breach. But if you are a data processor, you are given 48 hours to report to the data controller. So we've mentioned if there is any complaint, the data commissioner can carry out investigations on any complaints, and the outcome of the investigations could lead to an enforcement notice, penalty notice, dismissal of the complaint. So far we've had the first 3 prosecution. You could be taken to court for not complying with the Data Protection Act, or you may be ordered to compensate the data subject. And for purposes of administrative fine, you be ordered to pay up to 5 million or 1% of your preceding financial year's turnover. That's why we looked at during registration you submit this, but it is whichever is lower. That 5 million may be familiar with most of you within these SACCOs. Note that the data commissioner, while carrying out his investigations, if you obstruct him and you are found guilty, you could be fined up to 5 million or an imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years. But otherwise, it is not absolute. Again, you can have the right to appeal within 30 days. So right now, we are focusing on self-regulation. And my last 2 slides for take-home is maybe the areas of focus. SACCOs, kindly let us focus on compliance audits, carrying out DPA, the Data Protection Impact Assessment, most of the SACCOs have their data on local premises. Of course, securing our operating systems and databases, that is what the techs in the house do every day. But on our side, as ODPC, we carry out sensitizations, guidance notes, and white listing. So last but not least, these were just a sample of complaints that we have received, so that you just know the areas that may be of interest to you. So thank you so much. This is my presentation. I don't know if you are taking questions and answers. Carol, Mike, Ian, is there time for Q&A? Or
time is a bit far-stretched, but what we can be able to recommend is that during our tea break, we can be able to give the delegates an opportunity to interact with you in regards to your particular presentation. I hope that is okay with you. Oscar? Perfect. All right. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's appreciate Oscar Otieno one more time with a round of applause.